Hey guys, Gary, grateful recovering alcoholic and drug addict. Okay, today is step 5. So my personal experience, this is just my personal experience with step 5. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm not telling anybody that I'm a professional at this, but I definitely practice the 12 steps as often as possible, okay? So I've been really fortunate. I guess I should go through this first. In finding this person, and I touched a little bit about it on step 4. When you're looking for somebody to do this with, make sure you trust them. It's hard for us alcoholics and drug addicts to trust anybody, especially when we're new, because we've been out running game on everybody else, and it was for me anyways, running game on everybody else. It was hard to trust anybody. I thought everybody just had the same mentality I had. And I've always been a pretty tight-lipped person with people's secrets, especially in AA. And if you ever hear somebody's 4th step, if you're ever honored enough to hear that, honor that and be very tight-lipped. So I was really fortunate, the way I met my sponsor. What happened was I was sponsoring a guy, some guy that came in, and I don't even know how much time I had. I might have had like 6 or 8 months of sobriety, and I was kind of going sponsor hopping, couldn't find the right guy. And then what happened was I ended up, the guy that I was sponsoring called me one day and he goes, I'm going to kill myself. And I said, wow, how are you going to do it? And he said, well, I just rented a room here in Costa Mesa at the such and such hotel, and I'm on the 14th floor or whatever. I'm just going to, jump out one of these windows. And I said, well, I believe I worked in that hotel, and you can't open those windows. You'd have to get a running start and jump through the glass and through the window. And he goes, man, I'm not doing that. And I said, why don't we go to a meeting instead, and we can talk about it, right? So I picked him up and we went to a meeting. And this guy, we went to that meeting, and he made a connection with me. And I know what that's like to make a connection with another person. Somebody you just connect with on your sickness and your wellness, right? And that's what AA is all about, right? So we made that connection and we started working steps. And then he just kind of drifted away for a while. And what had happened was he called me one day and he was really pissed off, and he sounded really angry and really serious. And he said, I'm going to kill myself. And I said, well, how are you going to do it? And he goes, you know what? I'm not fucking around this time. I'm going to kill myself. And I said, well, let's go to a meeting, man. And remember how bad off you were? Remember that frame of mind you were in? And then everything's been great ever since. And you're just in a dip right now. So especially early sobriety, man, we have to learn to even that out with, emotional sobriety. And it takes working the steps and maybe therapy, whatever, but it takes some time. I said, let's go to a meeting. And he goes, you know what? Fuck you and fuck AA and all that hocus pocus bullshit. And I was like, whoa, man, I gave him my best shit, and he hung up. And then I got a call the next day that he had killed himself. A friend of, a guy that he was living with was a friend of mine. We knew each other from the meetings. And he called and said, Stephen had just bought a gun the night before. He waited he was on a 15-day waiting period. And he premeditated it that long. And he did it, man. Shot himself in the head with a small caliber pistol, and he didn't die right away. So it took a little while. It took a few days, I think, maybe a day or two to die. It was a horrible, horrible thing to go through, and I didn't have a year of sobriety yet. And a guy called me. He had heard what happened, and he had heard that I was sponsoring him. So this guy calls me, and this guy was like, he was just a pillar in Alcoholics Anonymous. He had a big life, man. He drove nice cars, lived in a nice home. He was super involved with, you know, I went, my home group was like 100 to 150 people, 150 on Saturdays, right? Basically, it was 100 people on the weekdays, and he knew all of them. And he would have these AA parties almost every weekend at his house. It was somebody's birthday that he was throwing a party for, but just super involved. And he loved AA. You could hear it when he shared. I didn't know the guy, but I just knew him from being in there and listening to him. And he would just hit it out of the fucking park every time he shared. Everybody would be laughing and clapping, and he was just a funny guy and loved AA. And he called me and he goes, hey, I'm such and such, and Mike R. And I heard what happened. And I said, yeah, I know, it's fucked up, man. And he said, you know, it's not your fault. You couldn't stop him from drinking. You couldn't stop him from killing yourself. You don't have that kind of power. Remember, you're powerless. You're powerless over alcohol, whether you're in that seat or in your own seat over alcohol and drugs. You're powerless. I can't help you stay off drugs and alcohol. I can help you, but I can't make you, and I can't make me. I'm powerless over the shit. What a great lesson that was to learn in early sobriety. And he said, who's sponsoring you right now? And I said, nobody. Do you want to sponsor me? And he said, yeah. And he gave me some pages to read out of the book, and I read those pages, and I wrote. I was like amazed, you know, just to be connected with this guy, because I just felt so like I couldn't believe he was even talking to me, you know. I guess when we get in, and I noticed this a little bit about myself today, you know, I'm still fairly new. I've got 18 months, and I beat the shit out of myself. I beat the shit out of my self-esteem. And I guess I was in real bad shape, you know, back then, because I was just like, I was afraid of everybody. And what was cool is we met for coffee and stuff before I read an inventory to him, and he told me how frightened he was about things, and I was like kind of blown away, like, you really feel that way? And he's like, yeah, I do. You know, I feel that way. I'm afraid I'm going to lose this, or this business deal is not going to go through, and I'm going to be broke. And he didn't even need to worry about being broke. He had so much money at that time. And I was just amazed that there was a guy, right, that put his life together. And by doing these steps, so he put his life together by doing these steps, and by a dependence upon a power greater than himself, his God, that he prayed to, that he had his personal relationship with. And he told me it was okay that I could create a God that I could have a personal relationship with, and that God would be my dependence. That's where my dependence would come from, not from a woman, which I always wanted to, you know, when I was in a relationship, we become dependent on others, and not from anything out here, not from anything. My dependence must come from a power greater than myself. And he really drove that point home to me, and I saw he was living his life on the fucking edge, right? on the edge, like business-wise. Like he was doing everything that I wanted to do in business and stuff like that. And he was very successful. And it was like I never could do that stuff because I was owned by drugs and alcohol. And I saw a guy, after we talked, he was put together just like me, right? Selfish, self-centered, and frightened to death. But because he had this God in his life, he was able to walk the world, have relationships, travel the world, run a $30 million a year company, have a functioning, healthy relationship. It was everything that I couldn't do because drugs and alcohol always got in the way. So hopefully I described the kind of person that you kind of want to look up to in Alcoholics Anonymous. Not in my way that I described it, but if you could think of what you want your world to be like, or and kind of find those kind of people that you look up to, that you think are funny, that have good character. And this is a guy that could be very temperamental, could get, suffered from road rage, right? And not often, but sometimes behaved very poorly sober, right? And what I loved about him was even though, like, if he had a day where he behaved poorly and told someone to go fuck themselves, right? He made amends. He brought it to a meeting and he shared about it. He opened himself up in front of 100 people every day, which isn't easy to do. Without apology. He didn't care. There was people judging him. He didn't care. I wasn't. I was like, fuck, man, this guy's got some stones on him, That guy is still my sponsor today. And he was just here in Houston a couple of weeks ago. We spent some time together. I don't do a lot of inventory work with him right now. And I was thinking about that, like, why don't you do inventory? Because I'm not bound up about anything. When I get really fucking bound up, I read an inventory before I left Palm Springs 4 months ago with him.